My sister secretly used my business credit card without telling me. When I showed Dad the charges, he said, "You're overreacting, it's just family helping family." So I shut down the entire business, and now they're all furious at me. Melanie, relax. It's just a few purchases. We're family. You're seriously going to ruin Thanksgiving over a Peloton? I stared at my younger sister, Brittany, sitting smugly at our dad's kitchen table. My knuckles were white around the credit card statement I had just printed. You used my business credit card without permission. That's not borrowing, it's stealing. Dad sipped his coffee and shook his head. You're overreacting, Mel. It's just family helping family. I stood up, walked out of that house, and within a week, I shut down the business I had spent over a decade building. And now they're all furious. But not one of them has apologized. I never thought I'd be the type of person to burn everything down. I always imagined myself as the high road kind of woman. Maybe that's how I ended up in this mess to begin with, letting things slide, avoiding conflict, convincing myself that biting my tongue made me noble. But there's only so many bites you can take before your mouth fills with blood. My name is Melanie, I'm 42, and for the last 12 years, I ran an event planning business in Richmond, Virginia. I started it when I was 30. I was exhausted from a corporate marketing job that drained my soul and offered nothing back. So I began planning weddings and retirement parties on the weekends. Word spread. My name got around. I took a leap, filed my LLC, and never looked back. The business grew slowly, but steadily. I moved from a tiny studio apartment to an office suite off Main Street, hired 2 assistants, and built a client list that included corporate law firms and high-profile nonprofits. I was proud, but more than that, I was tired. Building something from scratch isn't glamorous. It's 80-hour weeks. It's crying in your car between appointments. It's cleaning up champagne vomit at 2 a.m. because the venue's cleaning crew didn't show. But I did it. I made it work. Meanwhile, my family was complicated. I wasn't estranged, but I kept my distance. My dad, Charles, is a retired Army colonel, still convinced the world would be a better place if everyone followed orders like his soldiers did. My mom passed away 6 years ago from cancer. We were never close. She was the type to whisper judgment with a smile. And then there was Brittany. Brittany is 6 years younger than me. There has always been more chaos than people. She got married at 21, divorced by 24. Remarried by 27, divorced again at 31. She has 3 kids from the first marriage, all under 14. She floats between jobs, schemes, and self-proclaimed passion projects. I can't remember the last time she held a steady job for more than 6 months. Still, I tried to help. I'd babysit when she needed it. I covered her car payment 1 month when she was behind. She always acted like I owed her, though. Like being the older sister meant I was supposed to fix everything. And maybe I reinforced that by always showing up, even when I didn't want to. But this time? This time was different. It started small. My accountant flagged a few questionable transactions during our monthly report. We kept meticulous records, and my business credit card was only supposed to be used for client-related expenses. So when he asked me why we had charges from Sephora, Neiman Marcus, and a hotel in Virginia Beach, I told him it must have been a mistake. Until I saw the shipping address for the Peloton. It went straight to Brittany's apartment in Henrico. I thought maybe it was a fluke. A misunderstanding. I didn't want to believe she'd stoop to that level. So I called her. The call was short. Painfully casual on her end. Oh. Yeah, I used your card. I meant to tell you. I'll pay you back. Eventually. No apology. No shame. No recognition of how serious it was. When I pressed her, she said, "You're always acting like you're better than everyone. You make more than me. What's the big deal?" I felt something inside me freeze. I told her to come clean to Dad. Maybe he'd knock some sense into her. So I drove to his place, sat across from him and laid out the credit card statement. Told him the whole story. Expected at least some level of outrage. Instead, I got a lecture about compassion. "She's going through a lot," he said. "You're overreacting. It's just family helping family." That was the phrase that undid me. Because I had spent my whole life helping this family. I helped when Mom got sick. I helped when Brittany lost custody for 6 months and needed someone to watch the kids. I helped when Dad's pipes burst and he refused to hire a plumber. I helped and helped and helped, and the moment I asked for accountability, I became the problem. I didn't say anything else. I walked out and went home. That night, I sat at my desk in the quiet of my apartment and opened a blank document. I wrote a list of every event, every client, every vendor we had contracts with. Then I opened another document and drafted a resignation letter to my staff. I didn't make the decision in a fit of rage. It wasn't revenge. It was released. I was done carrying the weight of other people's chaos. The next day, I called a team meeting and told them I was shutting the business down over the next month. I offered severance, wrote glowing recommendation letters, and handed off client files with grace. Most of them were in shock, but they were kind. Supportive. I handled the logistics, closed accounts, canceled vendor contracts. Sold off the van. Packed up the office space and turned in the keys. Meanwhile, my family flipped. Brittany texted me long rants. Accused me of ruining everything over a misunderstanding. When I didn't respond, she started calling mutual friends. Spinning the story. Dad emailed me some article about letting go of resentment for inner peace. I laughed out loud when I read it. They still don't see it. They think I'm being petty. Dramatic. They don't understand that this wasn't about money. It was about disrespect. About the constant erosion of boundaries that finally collapsed. I had nothing left to give. In the weeks that followed, I expected some kind of clarity, maybe a shift in perspective from my family, or even the start of a meaningful apology. But nothing like that came. What did come was silence, then blame. At first, Brittany went quiet. I assumed she was either embarrassed or giving me the cold shoulder. But a week later, I started getting calls from extended family. Cousin Marianne left me a voicemail that started with, "I don't know what really happened, but Brittany is saying you ruined her life." Then Aunt Joyce chimed in with a Facebook message asking if I was having a breakdown and needed someone to talk to. So now I was not only the uptight older sister, I was the unstable one. Brittany's version of events had conveniently edited out her theft. In her telling, I'd had a meltdown and shut my business down just because she was struggling a little and needed help. She'd even claimed she asked permission, and that I told her to just put it on the card. Let me be clear, I never said those words. Ever. But this is how Brittany's always operated. She's slippery, charming when she wants to be, and somehow always ends up cast as the misunderstood, chaotic heroine while the rest of us get labeled controlling or cruel. And Dad? He bought it. He called me one night. I didn't answer. He called again. Then he left a message, "You need to talk to your sister. This is getting out of hand. She's telling the boys you're cutting her off for no reason. They're confused. They think you don't care about them." That message broke me a little. Because I do care about my nephews. Deeply. They're not to blame for any of this. And the idea that they think I abandoned them because of some petty adult squabble crushed me. But I also knew that if I went back even just to explain, I'd be giving Brittany what she wanted: access. A reset. A way to bury the truth under another layer of family guilt and rewrite history like she always does. And I was so damn tired of doing that. So I did nothing. I stayed quiet. I journaled. I booked therapy. I poured myself into reclaiming the parts of my life that had nothing to do with work or family. I joined a local pottery class on Wednesday nights. I reconnected with an old college roommate who lives in Charlottesville. We hadn't talked in nearly 8 years. I even started volunteering at a nonprofit that organizes clothing drives for single mothers. It was ironic, really. The very thing my sister claimed to be a struggling single mom I was now helping, without enabling. Sometimes, I still hear from clients, past vendors, or colleagues who haven't heard the news. "Wait, you shut it all down?" they ask, shocked. I don't explain much. Just that it was time. What I don't say is that my business had become a lifeboat I was expected to share with people who'd already drilled holes in it. Keeping it afloat meant plugging leaks while everyone else climbed aboard with muddy shoes and dripping bags. I was going down with a ship that wasn't mine alone anymore. Shutting it down wasn't dramatic. It was mercy. For myself. About 3 weeks after the last official closure paperwork was filed, I ran into Brittany. At Target, of all places. I was in the toiletries aisle, comparing moisturizers, when I heard her voice behind me. "Oh. Look who's slumming it at Target." I turned slowly. She was wearing athleisure and sunglasses, pushing a cart with her middle child in tow. I stayed calm. "Brittany," I said. She stared at me like I was the one who had crossed a line. "Nice to see you still spending money. Must be nice to be able to quit working and just float around town doing yoga and pottery or whatever." There it was. The bitterness. The sarcasm. The entitlement. "I didn't quit because I was bored," I said. "I shut down my business because my boundaries were repeatedly violated. And I realized I wasn't obligated to keep holding things up for people who refused to stand on their own." She scoffed. "You're so dramatic, Mel." God, it was a couple of purchases. Without my permission. On my business card. Which could have put my license, my credit, and my company at risk. "You act like I burned your house down." "You burned the last bridge you had with me, Brittany." That was it. I turned, left my items in the cart, and walked straight out the store. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt nothing but a cold, clear peace. The kind that only comes when you finally choose yourself. A few days later, my dad called again. I didn't answer. This time, I let it ring and deleted the voicemail without listening. I've stopped trying to explain myself to people who aren't interested in hearing the truth. And oddly enough, as much as it still stings, the betrayal, the smear campaign, the alienation, I don't regret it. Not even a little. Because for the first time in my life, I don't feel responsible for anyone else's mess. I sleep better. I eat slower. I don't dread weekends because I'm not preparing for another packed event. There's quiet in my life now. And in that quiet, I'm starting to hear myself again. A month after that run-in with Brittany at Target, I was sitting on my back porch with a glass of wine and no plans for the evening when I received an email from one of my former vendors, Vanessa, who ran the catering company I used for nearly every corporate event we did. Subject line: "Heard some things. Needed to check in." It was short and to the point. She said she'd heard rumors that my family was telling people I had a breakdown and closed the business out of nowhere. She wanted to hear the truth from me. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Hey Vanessa, thanks for reaching out. I didn't have a breakdown. I had a boundary. It just took me 42 years to figure out how to keep it." Mel, I hit send and left it at that. It wasn't just the rumors that bothered me. It was how easily people believed them. How quickly people who had worked with me for years accepted the version of me that my sister created: unstable, overly emotional, difficult. That version made more sense to them, I guess, than believing a woman might walk away from her life's work on purpose, not in weakness, but in strength. But this is something people don't talk about enough: how hard it is to walk away when you're good at something. When people admire you for it. When your whole identity is wrapped around being the one who has it together. Letting go of that identity left me stripped raw. I wasn't just leaving behind invoices and timelines and catering menus, I was leaving behind a self I'd worn like armor. Without the business, people didn't know how to place me anymore. And truthfully, for a while, I didn't either. About 2 months into this strange, post-business version of my life, I started attending therapy regularly. I'd done it off and on before after Mom passed, and again during a harsh client lawsuit that nearly sank my company. But this time felt different. The therapist was a woman named Dr. Ramirez, early 50s, thoughtful, no nonsense. On our second session, she asked me a question that rattled something loose. You said Brittany has always treated your success like an ATM. When was the last time she showed you she loved you without asking for anything? I couldn't answer. I literally couldn't remember a time. So Dr. Ramirez changed the question. Then why did you keep showing up for her? That one hurt worse. Because I knew the answer. Because I'd spent my entire life believing that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, held enough, eventually they'd see me. Not just as the stable one or the reliable one, but as someone worth protecting back. But it never happened. And it wasn't going to. There's a strange grief in realizing that your family may never love you in the way you need. And for weeks, I sat with that grief. I let it wash over me in waves, sometimes quietly, sometimes like a riptide that pulled me under in the middle of a perfectly normal afternoon. I cried at the grocery store once because I saw a mom helping her adult daughter pick out a birthday cake. I cried another time at the DMV because someone's ringtone was the same as my mom's old flip phone. It wasn't just about Brittany. Or my dad. It was about how lonely it is to live your life doing the right things, checking all the boxes, and still ending up unseen. By month 3, I had stopped checking my phone obsessively. The guilt was still there, but it was fainter, like a radio station just slightly out of tune. That was when Brittany emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. From an account I didn't recognize. The subject line was, "Can we please talk?" She started by saying she didn't realize how serious I was about the card situation. That she never meant for things to go so far. She apologized, sort of. But then came the real motive: she wanted help. Her childcare fell through. She was being threatened with eviction. She said she'd tried every other option and didn't know where else to turn. She didn't ask outright, but the implication was clear. And for the first time in my life, I didn't respond right away. I let the email sit. Not because I was trying to punish her. But because I needed to really ask myself, what was I willing to tolerate? And more importantly, what was I willing to repeat? Because I'd been down this road. The tearful apologies. The subtle manipulations. The slow unraveling of my boundaries under the weight of guilt and obligation. But I also knew this wasn't black and white. These were children involved. My nephews. Who had no part in this drama. And the thought of them suffering because of their mother's decisions made my stomach twist. So I sat down and wrote a new kind of response. One I'd never sent before. Hi Brittany, thank you for your message. I'm sorry you're going through a hard time. Truly. I know being a single parent is difficult. But I want to be clear, I'm not in a position to offer financial help anymore. That part of our relationship has ended. If you'd like support in finding resources, childcare programs, housing assistance, community aid, I'm happy to help research those options. But I won't be providing money. I hope you can understand. Mel, it wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was firm. She didn't respond. A week passed. Then another. I haven't heard from her since. Meanwhile, life carried on. I found myself laughing more. The stress lines around my eyes softened. I went out for dinner with friends I hadn't seen in years. We sat at an outdoor patio as the sun set over the James River, and someone said, "Mel, you seem lighter." And I did. I felt lighter. Not because things were perfect, but because for once, I wasn't carrying everyone else's weight on my shoulders. It's funny what we convince ourselves we have to do for love. That love means sacrifice, even to our own detriment. That if we just keep giving, eventually someone will love us back the way we love them. But I'm learning something else now: boundaries are love, too. And choosing yourself after a lifetime of not doing so? That's not selfish. That's survival. It had been 5 months since I shut the business down, 5 months since I'd last seen or heard from Brittany. My life had finally started to feel like it belonged to me again. And then one afternoon in early March, a letter arrived at my door. A physical letter. Not a text. Not an email. An envelope addressed in Brittany's handwriting. It was postmarked from a small law office in Midlothian. Inside was a handwritten note and a stack of paperwork. She was suing me. The letter accused me of unlawfully withholding funds that had been promised to her. She claimed that I had orally agreed to share profits from the business and that she had contributed ideas, support, and labor that had gone uncompensated. I stared at the pages for a full 10 minutes before laughing. It wasn't even angry laughter. It was stunned, disbelieving laughter. The kind that bubbles up when you realize someone has gone so far off the rails that it's almost comical. But beneath the absurdity, there was something else. Anger. Not the explosive, dramatic kind. The cold, righteous kind. The kind that whispers, "No more." I called my lawyer, Eleanor, who had helped me draft my business shutdown filings. She was thorough, sharp, and didn't suffer fools. When I sent her the paperwork, she responded within the hour, "This won't go anywhere. But if she wants to play this game, we'll play it properly." So we played. We filed a countersuit. Breach of privacy. Fraud. Unauthorized use of a business credit card. Eleanor advised us to include evidence of the charges, shipping confirmations, and our business insurance's coverage loss estimate since Brittany's unauthorized purchases could have cost me coverage, had we been audited. We also submitted the email Brittany had sent, the one where she apologized and essentially admitted to the unauthorized use. Eleanor said that alone would destroy any claims she made about a partnership or ownership. And then, we waited. For weeks, I heard nothing. Brittany didn't reply through her lawyer, and didn't try to contact me directly. But word got out because of course it did. I started getting cryptic messages from my family again. "Is it true you're taking Brittany to court? You're really going to ruin your own sister? She has kids, Mel. Think of the boys." The usual script. But I didn't engage. I let the silence speak for me. Until one morning, I got a call from Eleanor. "She dropped the suit," she said. "They sent over a statement asking for us to withdraw everything if no damages were pursued." I asked what she recommended. "Well," she said, "you could still sue for damages. You'd win. But it would drag things out." So I asked her a question I hadn't considered until that moment. "Can we reach a private agreement instead? One with conditions?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Absolutely." A week later, Brittany received a formal letter from my lawyer outlining the terms of a private resolution. Here's what we offered: I would not pursue financial damages or sue her for fraud. In return, she would formally withdraw any claim of shared ownership or verbal contract. She would agree, in writing, to cease all communication with me and not attempt further contact. Most importantly, she would write a full letter of apology, acknowledging the unauthorized use of my business credit card, the false claims made, and that she had no part in the company's creation, operation, or dissolution. Eleanor said we were pushing it. But Brittany signed. 2 weeks later, I received the letter. It was short, obviously written under pressure, and lacked any real remorse, but it contained everything it needed to: a signed statement admitting her misuse of funds, acknowledging her lies, and retracting her claims. And for the first time in years, I felt vindicated. Not because I had won. Not because she'd been humiliated. But because finally, there was something in writing, something concrete that proved I wasn't crazy, or cruel, or overreacting. I'd spent so long in a family that gaslit me into believing I was always the problem. Now I had proof that I never was. 3 months later, I ran into my dad at a community market. He looked older, tired. He asked if I had time for coffee. I almost said no. But I said yes. We sat at a corner table. He looked at me like he didn't quite recognize who I was anymore. She told me everything, he finally said. I didn't respond. She said you made her sign it under threat of court. No, I said. I gave her a choice. For the first time in her life, someone gave her a boundary with consequences. That's not a threat. That's how the world works. He stared into his coffee. He didn't argue. He didn't defend her. I didn't want to believe it, he finally said. I thought you were being dramatic. Like always. I smiled, softly. You thought I was being dramatic because she's always been loud. And I've always been quiet. You mistook silence for stability. And you ignored everything I carried just to keep the peace. He looked up. He looked ashamed. I'm sorry, he said. It wasn't everything. It wasn't enough to undo years of imbalance. But it was something. Today, I'm not rich. I'm not running a business anymore. I'm not the successful sister or the one everyone leans on. And for the first time in my life, I don't want to be. I work part-time at a local art center helping organize gallery nights. I teach a beginner ceramics class on Saturdays. I don't make nearly as much money. But I go to sleep at night without anxiety clawing at my chest. Brittany and I haven't spoken since. She's moved on to other people who will, inevitably, fall into the same trap I did. I wish her kids well. I hope they grow up to break the cycle. And as for revenge? This was it. Not some dramatic explosion. Not public shaming. Not lawsuits or rage or screaming matches. Just the truth. Quiet, undeniable, documented truth. And the knowledge that for once, she didn't get away with it. That she had to admit it, sign her name to it. That I got to walk away, not burned, not broken, but better. That's the best revenge I've ever had.